Discarding cards is one of the worst downsides a card can have in Yu-Gi-Oh! Due to how valuable even a single card can be. Any card played in spite of this downside must be of game determinative importance, either by virtue of an incredible effect or the ability to kickstart a chain of plays that lead to victory. Today we'll be discussing the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards that discard for effect, explaining why certain decks include them and some of the valuable interactions they enable. And rocking in at number 10, we have Morphing Jar, a classic flip monster. When flipped face up, it forces both players to discard their entire hand and draw 5 cards. An iconic juggernaut of classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Far past its prime, Morphing Jar was once considered a staple for its ability to simultaneously refill your hand and push a game's tempo to the extreme. Decks such as Teledan and Monarch often included it as a way to discard and draw massive amounts of cards, enabling powerful graveyard-reliant plays while reimbursing you for any resources you may have already spent. However, Morphing Jar is best known for facilitating Yu-Gi-Oh!'s first mill deck, Empty Jar, named after itself and its partner in crime, Cyber Jar. Aimed at sending your opponent's entire deck to the graveyard by repeatedly flipping these jars using Book of Moon and Taiyu, Empty Jar pursued the alternate win condition of Deck Out, which occurs when your opponent cannot draw any cards that they're required to. While this strategy was incredibly annoying and resulted in the jar spending time on the Forbidden Limitless, Empty Jar didn't age particularly well, and is extremely risky in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! While most of the cards involved have since seen releases from the ban list, the speed of the game has progressed to the point where the deck is now considered extremely bricky. In order for the strategy to work nowadays, one has to build it like an FTK with the goal of repeatedly drawing the perfect hand of Jar and Book of Taiyu, and then concurrent books to reset and reflip the jar over and over until your opponent decks out. But if that wasn't enough, even if you manage to draw the perfect hands in order to pull the FTK off, you also have to account for the fact that you're giving your opponent the opportunity to dig 5 additional cards for an Ash Blossom or Droll and Lockbird to stop your FTK each time you loop your jar. You also might accidentally trigger graveyard effects that your opponent can use to interrupt you as well, obliterating you faster than Exodia. Despite only really being viable in 4 fun decks at this point, Morphing Jar remains limited to this day for its past crimes. That being said, it's also a strong contender for a retro unhit in the near future, so keep an eye out for its rocking return. And joshing around the number 9 is Paleozoic Dinomischus, a normal trap card that allows you to target a face-up card in the field and then discard a card to banish it. Then, when a trap is activated while Dinomischus is in the graveyard, you can special summon it as a level 2 Aqua 1200 attack, which is unaffected by monster effects, but is banished when it leaves the field. Banishing any face-up card is an incredible effect, especially on a non-monster card, allowing it to out a myriad of hard-to-deal-with cards with ease. But what elevates Dinomischus from good to really good is the fact that it discards for effect and not cost. If Dinomischus' effect is negated by something like an Imperm Column or a Fiendsmith's Desiree, not only is its effect to banish negated, but so is its effect to discard. This makes it much less committal than it otherwise would be, allowing you to retain whatever card you would have pitched for other potential plays. That being said, Dinomischus is still a trap card living in the realm of modern Yu-Gi-Oh! It's extremely slow in comparison to other, newer cards, and therefore only finds its way into dedicated trap decks. But in those trap decks, Dinomischus fills a role that no other card does. The discard is often an upside that allows one to pitch cards like Absolute King Backjack, or the arguably broken Transaction Rollback while gaining advantage. Pure Paleozoic has recently undergone a bit of a resurgence as a glacially slow control deck due to its interactions with cards like Transaction Rollback and Soldier Dragons, and the standard Paleozoic stat line of level 2 Aqua enables Dinomischus as half of a Totally Awesome, a card stealing Omni-Negate and one of the best cards in the game. The main downside of Dinomischus and Paleozoics in general, beyond the regular trap card downsides, is the fact that their effects to summon from the graveyard in response to trap activation can be easily chain blocked by any chainable effect. This can quickly and easily leave a Paleozoic player wide open for an easy OTK, since they'll be unable to establish any board presence. And tearing it up at number 8 is Card Destruction, a spell card that simply forces both players to discard their hands and then draw the same number of cards they discarded. Another classic staple, Card Destruction may appear worse than Morphing Jar at first glance, since it refills your hand up to the cards discarded, inherently losing you a card in the process. But on the contrary, the fact that Card Destruction is a spell card instead of a flip monster has allowed it to age much more gracefully. This small difference has allowed Card Destruction to find use in a wide variety of decks that would never consider Morphing Jar as a way to dump large amounts of cards into the graveyard. Despite card destruction's inherent trade-off of losing a card in hand on activation, that being the slot where card destruction itself was, the prospect of recouping or even surpassing that lost in card advantage isn't unreasonable. When you consider the value of sending 4 or more cards with valuable graveyard effects to the graveyard, it becomes pretty obvious why certain decks don't mind making this trade. That being said, card destruction's effect is a double-edged sword, especially in best of 3 scenarios with side decks involved. While you get to dump cards to the graveyard, so does your opponent, and they didn't have to lose a card in order to do so. This becomes a massive problem when considering hand traps and silver bullet side deck staples that could instantly end your turn, as at the end of a single activation of card destruction, your opponent has had access to the top 10 cards of their deck. However, you can even use this against your opponent. The sheer advantage card destruction can provide in combination with its ability to cycle your opponent's hand has allowed it to find its way in a variety of FTKs listed amongst Morphing Jar and dangerous FTK enablers, as it also lacks a hard once per turn. While Morphing Jar is high on this list of cards that could become safely unlimited today, card destruction will likely remain as limited status for a long time, if not forever. And roaring into number 7 is Ken the Warrior Dragon, a level 3 warrior that actually requires us to look at a different card first in order to properly explain. Gen the Diamond Tiger is a level 3 warrior that, once per turn, can special summon Ken the Warrior Dragon from your hand or deck to your opponent's field in defense position. This will trigger Ken's mandatory on-summon effect of your opponent's side of the field, which requires your opponent, which in this case is you, to draw 2 cards and then discard 1. Alternatively, Ken the Warrior Dragon can special summon Gen the Diamond Tiger to your opponent's side of the field, which forces its controller to simply discard 1 card on summon. The special summon effect on both cards is a hard once per turn, and they both share an effect that returns them to your hand at the end of the battle phase. Ken and Gen may seem a bit counterintuitive the first time you encounter them, but they have a wide variety of practical use cases. Ken's on-summon effect to draw 2 and discard 1 is the better out of the pair, functioning like a mini Graceful Charity, a banned card that allows you to draw 3 and then discard 2. This allows Gen to go card neutral, refilling your hand to 5 cards, while also allowing you to pitch any card you might want that has a useful graveyard effect for free. In addition to generating advantage and starting plays, the Kenjin has a unique, extremely powerful quirk. It gives your opponent a monster, and then forces your opponent to activate its effect during your main phase. This small detail completely breaks 2 of the most powerful cards in the game, Triple Tactics Talent and Triple Tactics Thrust, which are balanced around your opponent having an agency in the decision to choose whether or not they play into or around them. In combination with these 2 cards, the Kenjin allows you to add any normal spell or trap card from your deck to your hand, and effectively turns Triple Tactics Talent from a card that simply references some banned cards into those banned cards. In 2023, Ken and Gen saw a small amount of play in Mikanko using Isolde as a way to give your opponent a copy of Acid Golem using Transverser, locking your opponent out of a special summon unless they had a way to remove it from the field. The main issue with the Kenjin is that, while Isolde is now banned, it now requires you to draw both Gen and then use your summon, which is simply too high of a price for the myriad of decks that would like to use this effect. And opening up at number 6 are the Gates of the Dark World, a field spell that gives all Fiend monsters 300 attack and defense, and allows you to banish a Fiend from your graveyard to discard a Fiend from your hand and draw 1 card. Like most Dark World cards, Gates lacks a hard once per turn. Genta, Gate Man of the Dark World, can be discarded to the graveyard in order to search Gates, which in itself is searchable by Snow on Light of the Dark World and Dark Corridor. Gates can then banish a Genta from your graveyard in order to trigger its effect to special summon itself upon being banished, overall netting you a discard, a draw, and a body on the field. While this might seem rather quaint in isolation, this is everything a Dark World deck needs to get its engine going on one of the most accessible cards, and the receiving end of a full Dark World combo is one of the last places you'd ever want to be. Going first, the entire game plan of Dark World revolves around pulling off a massive solitaire combo that loops the effect of Cerelia, Guru of Dark World, and Sylvia, Warlord of Dark World. These 2 cards aim to shuffle your entire hand back into your deck before you get a single turn, and as a cherry on top, set an in-archetype Omni-Negate to match whatever card you may draw at the start of your turn. Dark World also has access to a wide variety of going second tools, which allow them to distinguish themselves from most other combo decks intended to FTK. And since their effects activate primarily in the hand and graveyard, they don't mind and even have in-engine outs to a wide variety of the most powerful floodgates that currently see play. If these scenarios sound scary, that's because they are, But don't fret, as hand traps of even the most common variety are the bane of Dark World's existence. While the primary hand and graveyard effects of Dark World cards make the deck resilient to targeted effect negations such as Effect Veiler and Infinite Impermanence, a copy of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring in response to the gates or a singular activation of Drill Lockbird is usually more than enough to end a Dark World player's turn with a complete empty board and no interaction whatsoever. While not currently a meta contender, since Gates provides everything the deck needs and then some, it is likely to be one of the first Dark World cards to draw the ire of the ban list should the deck ever get out of hand. And gazing into the void at number 5 is number 60 Dugares the Timeless, a rank 4 Fiend Xyz that requires 2 level 4 monsters as materials to make, and as a hard once per turn, can detach both of its materials in order to activate one of 3 effects at the cost of an appalling downside. By skipping your next draw phase, you can draw 2 cards and then discard 1. By skipping your next main phase 1, you can special summon any monster from your graveyard in defense position, or by skipping your next turn's battle phase, you can double the attack of a monster you control until the end of the turn. Befitting a deal with a Time Meddling Devil, the immense power of making an advance on your next turn's resources comes with the ludicrous downsides fitting of the effect activated. All 3 of Dugares' effects are valuable, but the most commonly used effect is the one that allows you to draw 2 cards and then discard 1, typically under the assumption that you won't need your next draw phase because the game will be over. Similarly to Paleozoic Dinomischus, understanding the interactions that discarding for effect as opposed to cost creates a vital to understand what decks use Dugares and under what circumstances they might do so. While some cards aren't picky about how they're sent to the graveyard, others are incredibly specific about what conditions must be met in order to activate their effects. For example, the need to be discarded for effect or sent to the graveyard as a result of a card effect demands an effect like Dugares', enabling plays in graveyard-reliant strategies simply by virtue of existing. This has allowed Dugares to make its way into a wide variety of decks as a utility desperation option, and will likely continue to see play for years to come. And fiending for the number 4 spot on this list is Fiendsmith's Tractus, a normal spell card that, as a hard once per turn, adds a light fiend from your deck to your hand and then requires you to discard a card. It can also, as a hard once per turn, be banished from your graveyard to fusion summon a Fiendsmith fusion monster using monsters from your hand or field as material. As an engine, Fiendsmith is already easily worth its own dedicated video, and that's in no small part due to Tractus' effect to discard a card after searching. Just like Dugares, the ability to add first and pitch later is incredibly strong, but even more so in this case because Tractus allows you to search a specific card instead of simply drawing cards. This allows you to plan for an optimal card to discard, since you can search and then immediately discard any light fiend with the same effect. Luckily for Fiendsmith, Fabled Lure happens to be a light fiend with a single but game-breaking effect. If this card is discarded to the graveyard, special summon it. While the ability to special summon a single level 1 monster to the field is nothing earth-shattering, what is earth-shattering is Fiendsmith Requiem, an objectively broken Link 1 monster that just so happens to require any single light fiend as a material in order to summon. Through Fiendsmith Requiem in sequence, the Fiendsmith cards are able to create either a rank 6 and a link 3, link 4, and a wide variety of other generic extra deck tools with minimal main deck commitment, and without requiring your normal summon. If that wasn't already enough, the TCG exclusive Necroquip Princess, released alongside the Fiendsmith cards, fixed a problem with the OCG version of the engine, allowing for Fiendsmith's Tractus to function as a 1-card Beatrice on its own, in contrast to its prior status as a soft Garnet. This immense versatility allows for Fiendsmith Engraver, Fiendsmith's Tractus, and even Moon of the Closed Heaven to pivot and function between an in-engine starter that can kickstart your plays, a protection engine that insulates any following plays, to even an end board piece that provides a double on-field card negate, one of the strongest forms of interaction within all of Yu-Gi-Oh! In no small part thanks to Fiendsmith's Tractus and Fabled Lure. The Fiendsmith engine immediately dominated meta play and release in Snake Eyes, Fiend Link, and Tearlaments as starters and extenders. In fact, it's gone so far that these decks have even begun to include Crossout Designator as a way to prevent their opponent not only from hand-trapping their combos, but from also resolving the Fiendsmith cards they all share as well. Well, if the Fiendsmith cards are so powerful, you might be asking, why aren't they any higher in this list? The primary reason for this is the Fiendsmith engine's fragility. If any one of the pieces of Fiendsmith combos is disrupted by the Forbidden Limitless in any meaningful way, Fiendsmith's viability plummets from meta-warping super threat to bricky combo pile extender. While it's expected the Fiendsmith cards will live through at least 1 or 2 ban lists, the thin rope of viability of which it dangles prevents Fiendsmith's Tractus from overtaking the remaining tried and true winners of this list. And leaping into number 3 is Danger Jackalope. A level 3 Dark Beast that you can reveal in your hand to have your opponent discard a random card from your hand. Then if this discarded card was not Jackalope, you get to special summon Jackalope and draw a card. Or if it was Jackalope, you can special summon any danger monster from your deck in defense position. However, this special summon from deck can only be used once per turn. Based on various cryptids and mythological creatures, dangers are easily the best gamble archetype ever printed. Their effects to reveal, summon, and draw are not once per turns, with only their discard effects having a hard once per turn. They also discard cards for effect and are all dark attribute, which makes them synergize with the Lure of Darkness as a way to draw even more cards in decks like Dark World. Originating from North America as a hybrid between a jackrabbit and an antelope, Jackalope is the best danger, since it discards effect special summons another danger from the deck. In large legal quantities, Jackalope easily enables rank 3 and link plays alongside Danger Tsuchinoko, while simultaneously refilling your hand. In fact, danger monsters in general are incredibly dangerous for the game in large quantities. It turns out that 12 or more walking upstart goblins in any deck that likes its cards in the graveyard indiscriminately enables FTKs and meta decks alike, allowing dangers to play central role of some of Yu-Gi-Oh's most collectively agreed upon miserable formats. This is why Jackalope, Tsuchinoko, and Nessie have all spent time on various ban lists. The only realistic way to prevent these advantage generating piles from taking over the past was to restrict the generic monsters they abused or the best dangers themselves. However, as the meta of Yu-Gi-Oh's progressed over time, the ability to draw designated hand traps and starters has become increasingly centralized as opposed to the ability to turn a handful of engine pieces into a strong end board. It's been quite a while since Jackalope was limited, and since dangers barely see play in Master Duel where they're completely unrestricted, Jackalope and Tsuchinoko may find themselves released from captivity and set free into the wild in the near future. And blasted in number 2 is Branded in High Spirits, a quick play spell with 2 effects that share a hard once per turn between them. When activated, it allows you to reveal a monster in your hand and send a level 8 fusion monster with 2500 attack or defense from your extra deck to the graveyard with the same type as the revealed monster. Then you can discard the revealed monster to add any monster that mentions Fallen of Albaz from your deck to your hand. Alternatively, if Branded in High Spirits is in your graveyard and a fusion monster was sent to your graveyard throughout the turn, you can add it back to your hand during the end phase. Branded in High Spirits does a lot, and finds its way into quite a few different decks due to the variety of utilities that searching for any monster mentioning Albaz can provide. In addition to searching Albaz itself, they can also add starters such as Spriggan's Kit and Guiding Quem the Virtuous, or extenders such as Albion Shrouded Dragon and Blazing Cartesia the Virtuous. It can even be used to add Tri-Brigade Mercurier, Branded's in-engine hand trap if you're ending with an Albaz fusion on board. Branded in High Spirits utility often allows good Branded players to play through an Ash Blossom on Branded Fusion, and also gives them a second target for Albion the Branded Dragon's end phase search to raise the ceiling of their end boards while also securing follow-up. It also sees use in Spriggan's as a starter by sending Sprind the Iron Dash Dragon from the extra deck and adding Spriggan's Kit as a rank 4 extender. This lets them properly make Spriggan's Merrymaker and Gigantic Champion Sargast to dump and search Spriggan cards from the deck, while also summoning Spriggan's Captain Sargast during the end phase using Sprint's Graveyard effect. High Spirits also saw play in Branded Tearlament variants, allowing you to discard a Tearlament monster for effect while extra foolishing Tearlament's Rukalos. This set up an easy Tearlament's Kitkalos while adding any of the numerous splashable Branded monsters to your hand, all without putting any monsters on the field to play cleanly around Bestials. However, while Branded in High Spirits is an incredibly consistent card and engine piece in all of these decks and more, it doesn't quite hold up to the impact the next card on this list had on Yu-Gi-Oh!, skyrocketing an entire archetype from barely rogue to tier 1 status alongside the boss monster released alongside it. And lounging at number 1 is Purrely Sleepy Memory, a quick play spell card that nullifies the next instance of battle or effect damage you take and allows you to discard a card in order to special summon a level 1 Purrely monster from your deck. Also, any Purrely Xyz monster that has Purrely Sleepy Memory as a material can, as a soft once per turn, draw a card during your opponent's standby phase. Similarly to all the danger monsters' shared effects, all of the Purrely quick play spells share the ability to special summon a Purrely monster from the deck at the cost of a discard in addition to its own unique effect. Both main deck Purrelys use these scrapbook memories as material for summoning Purrely Xyz corresponding to the quick play spell used, with each spell providing a unique buff to the Purrely Xyz monster they're attached to. Purrely Sleepy Memory allows you to summon a Purrely Noir using Purrely's effect, which is both a board breaker that returns your opponent's cards to the hand and a setup piece that sets a Purrely trap from your deck to the field. Sleepy Memory's buff is also the best out of all the memories, allowing you to draw a card as a soft once per turn per copy attached to your Purrely monsters. This allows you to draw up to 3 cards if you have 3 copies attached, and up to 6 if all sleepy memories are attached to the same Purrely XCs, and then you XC summon an Purrely Noir on your opponent's standby phase using Pure Leap. This also grants that Noir Stray Purrely Streets targeting protection for the turn in addition to being unaffected by other card effects, which can come up in the event that it has spent its materials to shuffle your opponent's cards into their deck, therefore losing its unaffected status. However, discarding for every Purrely summon can eat your hand incredibly quickly, especially in the face of hand traps. Conveniently, the discard of all of the Purrely quick play spells required for special summoning happens to be a discard by effect, resulting in many Purrely pilots including dedicated series of bricks explicitly as discard fodder to recoup the advantage lost by the constant discarding, colloquially called the discard engine. Sleepy Memory has found itself at various positions in the TCG, OCG, and Master Duel Limited and Semi-Limited lists for its ability to draw additional cards and set up Pure Leap. The legal quantities of Sleepy and Delicious Memory almost directly correlates to the tiered status of Purrely, setting it further ahead of every other card on this list. Hello, I have some sad news for everyone. I launched a merch store for the first time a few weeks ago, and things are not looking good. Except for the mystery boxes, which are selling like hotcakes. And to celebrate the boxes, I'll be giving away free boxes. Comment down below, cool and mysterious, and you'll be entered to win a free box. And follow my Twitter too for more box giveaways.